look at you, making a big dramatic entrance and stealing my spotlight. What?
It's pretty strange, isn't it? I went through Devil May Cry 3's whole 20th year anniversary without making a video to commemorate one of my favorite pieces of media ever. Instead, I released a video on Ninja Theory's DMC reboot in place of a celebratory video, which is somewhat as tone-deaf as RGG releasing Yakuza Kiwami 3 to celebrate Like a Dragon's 20th anniversary. But hey, better late than never, right? Anyway, I just finished yet another playthrough of DMC3, and I caught some things, or rather some key elements and character quirks clicked with me that haven't before. Some aha moments, if you will. Now, I could go all out making a video about how revolutionary the game was and how it changed gaming forever and all that jazz, but that's already been done to death, and I'd probably be preaching to the choir at this point. Rather, I want to chew on some revelations I had after my biannual playthrough. You heard that right. I did recently, and I thought it might make for a fun video to exhibit them just in case they haven't been uttered before, or at the very least, if they have, they could resurface and be acknowledged once more for this occasion. There are new discoveries for this game every so often, usually tied to gameplay or mechanics, but this video will strictly pertain to story and character idiosyncrasies. There's a surprising amount of room for interpretations about this series despite it being fairly straightforward, but just opaque enough to warrant speculation. I guess you could also thank the daunting amount of external media for this too. But it's always fun to discuss theories or unique headcanons, so don't take this video at face value, but instead as a video to open up some dialogue since these theories will mostly be out of conjecture. So without further ado, let's get into it. We'll start with something light and, well, probably a little obvious that just happened to fly over my head after all this time, and I have to wonder why it never occurred to me that, despite not seeing Vergil in a year, Dante knew that the awakening of the hulking Tim and the Gru was Vergil's doing. Now you could argue that with their prior meeting, Dante had a hunch of what Vergil was up to, and would presume that this havoc could only have been done by his devilish older brother. But I think it's mostly just a byproduct of being the offspring of only one of the most powerful demons in existence. This is supported by the fact that shortly after, as Dante and Lady breach the Ice Guardian's chamber, Vergil senses that a human woman is also ascending alongside the expected Dante. How could he possibly know this? It seems like a deep meditative state kindles this clairvoyance, or perhaps it's simply just a quirk of his, since he's a pretty introspective guy. None of the other titles really showed this power to its full extent, if memory serves, but this is a gleaming example that just so happened to awaken in my mind and my most recent playthroughs. Despite Devil May Cry and its forebear franchise, of which it was an offshoot, Resident Evil, having predominantly been catered to Western audiences, primarily the Americas, despite being developed in-house in Japan. I recently visited the Asakuso Sensoji, which is Tokyo's oldest established temple and one of its most significant, easily recognizable for its hanging big red lantern. The entrance to the temple is this distinctive gate where the entrance side holds two statues of the Shinto gods Fujin and Raijin, who are twins, for whom my first thought when observing them was, this reminds me a lot of Agni and Rudra. I know their names are directly derived from the Hindu gods of the same name, but their theological context is more in line with Fujin and Raijin, sans the fire element. Both these brothers are the gods of wind and thunder, but Raijin is often depicted as red and Fujin as bluish green. What's even more interesting is that these sculptures are relatively new, as they were restored in 1960. Whereas the original sculptures were severely damaged in 1865 due to a fire, where only their heads were preserved. Could this be the reason why they're headless in DMC3, where their bodies burned in the hellish inferno? Perhaps a stretch, but makes sense to me. Agni and Rudra tangent aside, this got me looking deeper into interviews about the game, where I learned that the game was actually developed with Japanese audiences in mind, which started to make sense since I had that epiphany with Agni and Rudra while in Japan. But in retrospect, it's more obvious now with the game's overall anime-adjacent aesthetics, ladies' schoolgirl attire, and heck, you could even argue that Arkham wears a gakuran. Kawaii. Also, the inclusion of Japanese weapons such as the Cerberus Nunchaku and the Yamato really drives this home. Devils Never Cry, the most iconic Devil May Cry song, was also at one point the name switch for Dante's shop for a brief period. The name switch was due to his and Trish's newfound partnership. Since Trish is a demon made to look like Dante's mother as a troll moved from Mundus, he changed the name since she shed a tear despite being fully a demon, as a way of saying, despite your demonic being, you're not like them since you were able to change your ways and literally shed a tear. And this is canonically the reason for the name switch. But recently I developed a headcanon behind this iconic string of words. Devils Never Cry could be a playful phrase Eva used to say to comfort Dante and Vergil as children when they were upset.
Let me jog your memory. A little Vergil. Crying in the corner. Because mommy got mad.
Which is why it was reassuring and comforting for Dante when Mary says that even a devil may cry when they lose a loved one. Not only was it a humanizing phrase to validate his emotions, but it was also very similar wording to what his mother used to say, hence that name stuck as a sentimentality. It even makes sense why he would later change Devil May Cry to Devil Never Cry when Trish joins due to her resemblance to his mother. Switching the name would further honor her memory to the fullest, which leads me to my next discovery. Okay, so I've noticed that Dante is very impressionable in this game, which makes sense because he's still at that stage of going through growing pains. On that note of Dante eventually naming his shop Devil May Cry after what Mary said to him, it would seem he likes taking inspiration, or rather what others say seems to rub off on him. Another case of him parroting Mary is with his final battle with Vergil.
My soul is saying it wants to stop you!
I'm driven by the inability to forgive him. My soul is screaming, demanding me to kill him.
Which gave me a harrowing thought or realization. Before this iconic scene where Mary is coined Lady by Dante,
Whatever, lady.
in his last run-in with Jester, aka Arkham, notice one of the last things he says to Dante.
May I have this dance, my lady?
Now, lady is a fairly common name to call a female stranger, especially passive-aggressively. But just what if, since Jester says lady as a passive-aggressive slight to Dante, Dante passive-aggressively echoes it in a similar demeanor. Therefore, Mary's proud declaration that she is now lady, because that's what Dante called her, was actually indirectly coined by Arkham.
After all, it was I who gave you your name.
Leaving her with an ignorant scar that rests deeper than her physical ones. After Vergil succumbs to Mundus in the demon realm, he is then turned into Nelo Angelo, being entrapped in an armor that looks rad on the surface, but may in fact be a mockery of sorts. The armor resembles Sparta's demon form but lacks the insectoid features, and while Sparta's horns are curved downward, Nelo's horns are a little too low, lacking integrity like, say, a jester's hood. After all, Nelo Angelo is Mundus' servant and has a reputation for being a bit of a troll in DMC1. You could also look at it as Mundus mocking him for teaming up with Arkham, a human lustful for demonic power, as Vergil somewhat resembles that descriptor too, being half human, branding him as simply a fool for his efforts. And why not make the horns floppy like a jester's tendrils? Well, they probably didn't want to be too on the nose about it, like how they handled Agni and Rudra. Maybe the armor blending Sparta's characteristics and that of a jester is also a slight at Sparta himself for betraying him in favor of humankind. Anyway, happy 20-year anniversary to Devil May Cry 3. I think after this video I've absolutely squeezed everything I possibly can out of this game at this point, save for possibly one more character study for one last hurrah. Wink wink. I hope you enjoyed the video. What did you think of my discoveries? Can I even call them discoveries, or is this common knowledge by now? What are some of your discoveries that I may have missed? Comment below and let me know, and I hope to see you all in the next video.